When the paper began publication in 1971, Dr. King had been assassinated just 3 years earlier. The civil rights movement was in decline. The U.S. was at war in Vietnam. The anti-war, Black Power, students' rights, and women's movements were on the rise. Social upheaval dominated the headlines. Inspired by the activism of the day, the paper reported stories not traditionally covered in college newspapers. News coverage ranged from community issues to national and international news and the arts. Breaking several stories before the mainstream press, the paper reported the truth behind the 1971 Attica prison uprising weeks before the New York Times.
This is a very different campus than it was in 1968. Most of the day in the classes that I was taking, I didn't see any other black students. There were so few of us. We all just seemed to congregate together.
I came into City College, I started as a night student, and then got tired of going at night and started in the day.
My job at the time was to capture whatever I could on film. And I have so many to pick any one.
For me, the paper was the continuation of that movement from community to the campus. And I was a member of the Black Panther Party. I was sent up here actually to check in on what was going on, and then I actually became a full-time student.
There were no black counselors. None of the administrators were black. So at every point you were being confronted with a world that was very different than you were.
We didn't feel like we belonged here, but the paper was a place that, created our belonging. And the camaraderie, as Jerry said, and the fellowship and the friendship and the commitment to each other, was what we felt was necessary for our own survival.
I remember being in a history class, I think it was, and it was right when the paper was starting to come out, and it said The Paper. And students in the class, as Greg said, were predominantly white, and they said, who are these arrogant people to name their paper The Paper? And I knew immediately I needed to be there.
This particular community, think about it, all of the people on Convent, St. Nicholas Terrace and others, had never stepped foot onto this campus until we took it over. And then we brought them in.
It was a mixed group. We had some whites on the paper, Tom McDonald, going back to the early days, Dennis Smack, David. And we were a straight newspaper. We reported on what was happening on campus, in the community, but national affairs and international.
It was the camaraderie. It was a family. We established a relationship there, and I think it was because we were all in different ways in this struggle.
Working on the paper, and in the early days, we had Louis as a kind of a mentor and a pusher for truth. Louis was a great writer, and he was also very interested in getting the words and syntax right, looking up in the dictionary. Don't be afraid to check your spelling and your syntax. And as Jeff said before we started the session, showing up on time.
We had to study, and we had to produce. We didn't just play around with this newspaper and not go to class and doing whatever. We were required. They were monitoring us. We were the symbols of success or failure for our race and our generation. Imagine the pressure.
We had funding from the school for a 4-page paper. We were running a business. We wanted to do more than 4 pages. We had to go out and get the ads.
Jerry and I used to go down with a few others, and we would literally, create the paper. That was the other part of what we were doing when we were together, spending nights, learning how not to make excuses.
One of the things that the experience of those times taught me was the willingness to stand up for what you believe and to be willing to challenge people. Another thing I came out of the experience of the paper with was the ability to think critically, to be able to think and analyze things critically. Being in situations where we did stuff like that, it taught me not to be afraid of authority. Be respectful of authority, but not to be afraid of it. Because when you're right, you're right. And people will respect you if you stand up for what you believe in. So that was what I got out of the paper.
So the paper was you bringing the world into City College and City College into the world. We got to come back onto this campus. We got to talk to, our brothers and sisters. We have to really, really try to empower you to have your voice. Because what I think is missing is that when we don't have a paper like the paper or whatever it is, we're missing something. Because you have a distinct, perspective about things that, that we want to hear.
It was such a powerful experience in their lives that they wanted to come back all these years later to CCNY, yes, to be together, but also to share that experience with students here today and to encourage students here today to be part of the paper and part of the ongoing experience and history of the paper.
My name is Leilani Goodwin. I'm the editor-in-chief of the paper, and the reason why I joined the paper is basically of the environment that we are in currently, basically watching history repeat itself.
Because we saw important parallels between the kind of social unrest that was happening in the 60s and the Black Lives Matter movement that's happening today. And it's a perfect time for the paper to exist.
And I was really inspired by the stories of the founders of the paper. And as the advancement officer at City College, I am responsible for making sure that programs and things like this can continue on financially.
The fact that they came back to the school, to their roots, and really talking about who they are, what they did, what they wanted to accomplish. Because when they went to school, it was way different than it is now. So learning about the people and why they work so hard to get these stories out, and what motivated them is what mattered the most to us.
I was impressed by how vibrant those guys still were. Jerry Monteser, Greg Holder, and everyone. I can't remember everyone's name, sorry. But I was surprised at how vibrant they still were and how passionate they still were about the paper and ensuring that its legacy lives on.
I did find a lot of encouragement and inspiration in them. They seemed to have known the direction that they wanted to go in, and they didn't let any outside factors deter them from their main mission and goal, which is to get out a paper of people of African descent.
They talked about how one of the members, who was a student himself, but who really showed them how to write and write well, and in some cases gave them the kind of skill and professionalism that allowed some of them to create journalistic careers.
They had the same concerns and thoughts as I do now. I was surprised by that, and it did inspire me to continue on the journalism path, to really be courageous and go for the stories that I care about, because chances are if you care about something, other people care about it.
I really wanted to be a part of this. I believe in our mission statement, talking about Black excellence and people of color, which is not a topic very discussed in our society. And why not try to put a stop to that by joining something that kind of speaks on those issues?
You can make a difference. You can go and take your ideas and write about things that you want to write about and talk about the things that you want to talk about that are personal and, you know, political for you as an African American or as a Latino or a person of color.
So we encourage anyone, certainly people who have skills are wonderful, we love you, but also if you have no skills, but you have a lot of energy and you have a lot of enthusiasm, you can learn how to be a journalist, how to be a photojournalist, how to be a video documentarian, how to be a social media manager by working at this publication where you will be taken seriously and you will have a role.